In July 2025, American Eagle ran a denim ad that critics called racist, that a sitting U.S. president publicly praised, and that online campaigns tried to get pulled entirely. 90 days later, that same ad had added close to $2 billion to the company's market value. We'll get to the one detail almost nobody connects to those numbers, a detail about where the outrage actually came from, and it's not where you'd assume. This isn't a story about a genius marketing team who planned a culture war and won it, and it isn't a story about a company that got away with something ugly for profit. Both versions are floating around the internet right now, and both are too clean. The real story is messier, and it says something uncomfortable about how attention gets manufactured today, whether a brand plans for it or not. American Eagle Outfitters built its identity in the late 90s and 2000s as the affordable, all-American alternative to Abercrombie & Fitch, mall culture, high school lockers, logo tees. By the 2010s, that identity had aged badly. Fast fashion players like Zara and H&M, and later Shein and Temu, outpriced and outcycled it. Gen Z's attention had moved to platforms American Eagle wasn't built for. The company's one clear bright spot was Aerie, its body-positive intimates brand, which had spent a decade building loyalty with exactly the kind of inclusive marketing American Eagle's core brand struggled to translate into denim sales. Then came a rough start to 2025. In the first quarter, American Eagle wrote off $75 million in inventory it couldn't move and withdrew its full-year financial guidance altogether, the corporate equivalent of telling investors, "We genuinely don't know what happens from here." That's the position the company was in on July 23rd, when it released a 30-second ad starring Sydney Sweeney. The ad leaned on a pun, jeans and jeans. Sweeney, blonde-haired and blue-eyed, talked about how traits get passed down through genetics while the camera framed her in American Eagle denim, a visual echo, critics quickly pointed out, of a controversial 1980 Calvin Klein campaign that had starred a 15-year-old Brooke Shields. Within days, commentators and academics were calling the wordplay a coded nod to eugenics, and the discourse escalated to the point where Texas Senator Ted Cruz and President Trump both weighed in publicly, Trump calling the ad fantastic. Here's what happened next, in order. On September 3rd, American Eagle reported second-quarter earnings. Revenue was actually down 1% year-over-year to $1.28 billion, a fairly unremarkable number on its own. But operating income was up 2%, EPS was up 15% to 45 cents a share, and management said something that changed everything. Since the Sweeney campaign launched, the company had gained more than 700,000 new customers, and the Sweeney and Travis Kelce campaigns combined had generated 40 billion impressions. The stock jumped 25% within minutes after hours. When the market reopened the next day, it kept climbing and closed up nearly 38% for the session. A single-day gain of roughly $400 million in market value on a stock that had opened that morning under $14 a share. The momentum didn't stop there. By December, American Eagle raised its holiday quarter sales forecast to 8 to 9% comparable growth, more than triple the 2.2% analysts had projected. Its third-quarter results beat expectations again, and by April 2026, the stock had climbed 77% since the campaign launched the previous July. Six-month revenue growth had accelerated to 37%, up from 24% in the same period a year earlier. All of this while the company was simultaneously absorbing tens of millions of dollars in new tariff costs on imported merchandise. A genuinely difficult year on the supply chain side, running in parallel with the best marketing result in the company's recent history. If you've made it this far, you're exactly who this channel is for. Subscribing helps me keep making these. No pressure, but I'd appreciate it. So here's the detail that gets left out of almost every retelling of this story. The backlash itself didn't begin as an organic wave of shoppers noticing an offensive ad. The New York Times, reconstructing the campaign's spread, found that the online outrage escalated specifically once a small number of highly influential right-leaning accounts began amplifying claims that the political left was outraged by the ad. Before that outrage had actually spread on its own.
In plain terms, a meaningful part of the backlash was itself manufactured commentary about a backlash, pushed by accounts with large followings in an obvious incentive to frame the story as the left attacks a pretty blonde woman for having good genetics. Once that framing existed, it created the perfect conditions for a second wave, commentators on the other side gleefully agreeing that yes, this was exactly the kind of thing the left would be outraged by, and amplifying it further. Sydney Sweeney herself said afterward that she was surprised by the reaction and didn't personally endorse the interpretations people attached to the ad. American Eagle never issued a real apology, and it didn't need one. The outrage cycle had already run its full course by the time anyone at the company needed to respond substantively, and it left behind something no ad budget could buy: 40 billion impressions of free, deeply engaged, multi-week media coverage converted almost entirely for the cost of one denim shoot. This is the part that outlasts one jeans ad. In the current media environment, sustained outrage is a distribution mechanism, arguably a more efficient one than traditional advertising because someone else pays for the airtime and it reaches audiences who otherwise would scroll straight past a denim commercial. A brand doesn't have to engineer a culture war to benefit from one. It just needs a message loaded enough that opposing audiences can each decide the ad is secretly about them and then get out of the way while partisan media, on every side, does the distribution work for free.
But that mechanism cuts both directions, and it's worth being precise about why this case went American Eagle's way. 2 years earlier, Bud Light became the textbook example of the same mechanism working in reverse. A single social media partnership triggered a boycott that cost the brand its position as America's top-selling beer, a position it has still not recovered. The difference wasn't the intensity of the backlash, it was who the backlash aligned against relative to each brand's existing customer base. American Eagle's core buyers skewed toward the audience that felt validated, not alienated by the controversy. Outrage doesn't reliably produce profit. It produces profit only when it happens to point in the same direction your customers were already leaning. American Eagle clearly read the result as repeatable. It brought Sweeney back for a lower-stakes follow-up campaign in 2026, and by the spring, competitors including Gap had launched their own high-concept, high-attention denim campaigns chasing a similar effect. Whether this becomes a durable playbook or a one-time accident of timing and politics that nobody can reproduce on demand is the open question the entire apparel industry is now running its own experiments to answer. So, was this a story about a brilliant ad or a company that got lucky inside a culture war it didn't start? Probably neither cleanly. The more accurate read might be that American Eagle didn't sell denim that summer so much as it sold a referendum, and hundreds of millions of people cast a free vote on the company's behalf, paid for entirely by their own attention. If you want the next teardown on the marketing that nobody thought would actually pay off, it's linked in the description. See you in the next one.